Okay, so think about this. In June of 1967, a war breaks out that lasts less than a single week. But its consequences? They completely reshape the Middle East for generations to come. It was a war that unfolded with unbelievable speed and had a devastating impact. And today, we're going to unpack how it all went down.
So this is the big question we're tackling. How on earth could a conflict that was over in what feels like the blink of an eye cause such a massive, lasting shift in territory, in power, and in politics?
To really get how this war started, you have to rewind the clock a little. The Middle East in the mid-1960s was, well, it wasn't exactly a peaceful place. It was more like a pressure cooker, and the heat was being turned up fast.
Yeah, this conflict did not come out of a vacuum. These tensions had been simmering for decades. Ever since Israel was founded back in 1948, many of its neighbors just refused to accept its existence. And this wasn't just talk. It led to constant friction, like regular border skirmishes, especially with Syria. The whole atmosphere was just thick with this feeling that a huge war wasn't a matter of if, but when.
Then, in the spring of 1967, Egypt's President Gamal Abdel Nasser starts making some really bold moves. First, he kicks out the UN peacekeeping forces. You know, the guys who were there to act as a buffer in the Sinai. Then, he closes the Straits of Tiran, which was a huge deal because it was Israel's only way to ship things to Asia. It was a major economic lifeline. And the final piece? He builds military alliances with Jordan and Syria. So if you're Israel, you're now looking at hostile armies on basically all of your borders, getting ready for an attack.
And this is the absolute turning point. Faced with what its leaders saw as a threat to their very existence, you've got armies massing on your borders, your key shipping lane is blockaded, the Israeli government made a monumental decision. They decided not to wait to get hit. They launched a preemptive strike.
And that decision, well, it triggered one of the fastest and most decisive military campaigns in modern history. So let's take a look at how this whole thing unfolded across multiple fronts in just a handful of days. The war moved at just a blistering pace. It all kicks off on the morning of June 5th with a massive aerial assault. Then from the 5th to the 7th, you've got intense ground combat against Egypt in the Sinai and, at the same time, against Jordan in Jerusalem and the West Bank. By June 9th, the fight moves north to the Golan Heights against Syria. And then, just like that, on June 10th, a ceasefire brings the whole thing to a halt.
300. This number right here is probably the most important number of the entire war. So what is it? On that very first morning, Israeli jets flew in super low, under the radar, and launched a surprise attack on Egypt's airfields. They wiped out roughly 300 Egyptian aircraft, most of them before they even had a chance to take off.
And that right there shows you the incredible power of that first move. By taking out the Egyptian Air Force and hitting Syrian and Jordanian air power too, Israel completely owned the skies. What does that mean? It means their ground troops could move forward without worrying about being attacked from above, while the other armies had zero air cover. You can make a very strong case that the entire war was pretty much won in the first few hours of day one.
Okay, so with complete control of the air, Israeli ground forces just surged forward. And the result was a change in territory so huge, it literally and permanently altered the map of the entire region.
Let's break this down. From Egypt, Israel captured the entire Sinai Peninsula, a massive land buffer, and the Gaza Strip. From Jordan, they took the whole West Bank, and in a moment with massive historical weight, East Jerusalem, including the Old City. And from Syria, they seized the super strategic Golan Heights, which is this high plateau that looks right down into northern Israel. It's honestly hard to wrap your head around the scale of this victory, but this number helps. 3 times. That's right, in just 6 days, the amount of land under Israeli control became 3 times larger than it was before the war started. It was just a staggering geopolitical shift that happened almost overnight, giving Israel what military planners call strategic depth, basically new, more defensible borders. But here's the thing. The war ending on June 10th wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. In fact, it was the beginning of a whole new chapter of conflict, of occupation, and diplomacy that is still playing out today. The outcomes for both sides were just a total mirror image. For Israel, it was this unbelievable military victory. For the Arab states, it was a humiliating, devastating defeat that shattered national pride. And while Israel got that strategic depth and control over all of Jerusalem, it also inherited a new, massive problem. A military occupation of over 1 million Palestinians in these new territories. And that reality would go on to define the conflict for decades. And the shockwaves from this war were felt all over the world.
The U.S. cemented its role as Israel's #1 ally, the Soviet Union doubled down on its support for Egypt and Syria, and suddenly the Middle East becomes a major chessboard in the Cold War. In the region itself, the war created yet another wave of Palestinian refugees and fueled the rise of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO. With hopes for a diplomatic solution fading, more militant groups within the PLO gained power, basically arguing that armed struggle was the only way forward.
So in the middle of all this, the international community tries to figure out a path forward. And what they come up with is UN Resolution 240. This document became the foundation for pretty much all peace talks for the next 50 years. The core idea was simple to say, but incredibly hard to do: land for peace. The deal was supposed to be that Israel would withdraw from the territories it just captured, and in return, its Arab neighbors would grant it peace and finally recognize its existence. And that brings us right back to today. The Six-Day War created a totally new reality on the ground, and it created this new formula for trying to solve the conflict: land for peace. It redrew the map, and it set the rules of the debate for the next half-century. But it also left behind the one central, unresolved question that still echoes today. Is that formula, is that peace, still achievable?